Hurricane Sandy, unofficially referred to as Superstorm Sandy, was the deadliest and most destructive, as well as the strongest hurricane of the 2012 Atlantic hurricane season. Hi, I'm Chris May, host of This Day in Weather History, brought to you by the Royal Canadian Mint. Find the new painted dime featuring Blue Nose in your change. At that time, my brother lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, and was very directly impacted by this, like millions of others, both financially and logistically. This day in weather history. I was on the phone with my brother when the storm surge moved up and over the breakwall along the Hudson River, washed over Sinatra Park, and then began flowing uphill, submerging streets. Hurricane Sandy did not look like much when it was churning and developing, but it had a hidden agenda. In the end, and after all the chaos that ensued, the storm inflicted nearly $70 billion in 2012 USD in damage and killed 233 people across 8 countries, from the Caribbean to Canada. It was the 18th named storm, 10th hurricane, and second major hurricane of the year. Here is the timeline as it's set up. Then, on the 29th of this month, we will conclude our story with its eventual landfall on the United States. October 22nd, TD-18 develops into a tropical storm in the Caribbean Sea and is named Sandy. On the 24th, Sandy, almost 3 days later, develops into a Category 1 hurricane, then immediately gets to work that same day with a landfall near Kingston, Jamaica, with winds of 80 miles per hour, almost 130 kilometers per hour. On October 25th, Hurricane Sandy, now upgraded to a Category 2 hurricane, makes landfall in Cuba, packing 105 mile per hour winds, almost 170 kilometer per hour. But not one to rest on its laurels, it sets off for Haiti and then the Bahamas with more landfalls. Sandy was making the rounds and hitting everything in its path. This was a one-storm wrecking crew. On the 26th, Sandy is only a Category 1, with winds back down to 80 miles per hour or 130 kilometers per hour. Now, knowing something was amiss here, the U.S. states of New York, Maryland, Washington, Pennsylvania, North Carolina jump and declare a state of emergency. On October 27th, as Sandy enters a new period of transition, the National Weather Service downgrades Sandy to a tropical storm. Was this a critical mistake? Did people take it lighter when this declaration was made? Did it lessen the intensity of prep by the average citizen? Later that day, Sandy strengthens again back up to a Cat 1 hurricane with sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. With this turn of events, the states of New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts declare states of emergency of their own. Now the list of concerned state governments has grown to full anticipation of some sort of landfall in their very, very densely populated shores. You're listening to This Day in Weather History, a podcast from the Weather Network in Canada, reminding you to check your change for the new painted dime featuring Blue Nose from the Royal Canadian Mint. Speaking of shores, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie orders residents living in the barrier islands from Sandy Hook south to Cape May to evacuate. He orders the casinos to evacuate no later than 4 p.m. on the Sunday. Their commuter train system, the Amtrak, cancels all its scheduled runs that originate or end in any of the East Coast stations that are in the declaration of emergency zones. October 28th. Rail prep and cancellations continue the next day when New York's MTA suspends all subway and commuter rail and bus service after the post-work rush on this day. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo instructs the Army and Air National Guard members to get into position and in a ready state to mobilize in the event of public panic or evacuation. This is accompanied that very same day by New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg ordering all schools to close and low-lying areas to evacuate. We need a word from the White House now, and it came when President Barack Obama declares a state of emergency for Connecticut, Washington, Delaware, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York, and Rhode Island. And that brings us to October the 29th. We will pick this story up in 4 days when Hurricane Sandy made its landfall on the mid-Atlantic seaboard and unleashed a storm surge that residents of Long Island, Staten Island, and the Jersey Shores will never forget. On October 29th, that day in weather history. Tomorrow is October the 26th, and for this, we have a truly special occasion. We're going to be talking about the most famous ship in Canadian history, the Bluenose Schooner, a fishing vessel, but also a racing legend. We're going to talk not only about the history of the Bluenose and the waters that it would have sailed in over its brilliant career, but then what happened that brought it to its end. That story is tomorrow on This Day in Weather History with me, your host, Chris May, and brought to you by the Royal Canadian Mint. Find the new painted dime featuring Bluenose in your change. See you tomorrow.